what classes were required for you?
I mean, I think that, you know, I'm currently in education, you know, and I see like some good and some bad in that. I don't know. I wish we had more options, like in general in education, you know. But you know, like we got some kids that don't want to be like on the college-bound track, but you know, so much now schools are so pushing. Oh, we got to go to college. We got to go to college. You know, I know we have the VOTEC program here, and I love Kennett School District. I do, I do. And I'm just meaning education in general. I don't mean Kennett. I just wish that there was. I hate that it's coming. I hate that it came on standardized testing what track you went on, but I like the fact that there's more. That they had the tracks. I think that could be, in some aspects, could be beneficial, but I don't necessarily agree with the way that they put them in the track. You know, I don't know. I wish there was more tracks that people could select. I guess is where I'm at. Right now, I feel like you have. I'm going to go straight to work, or I'm going to go to college, and you know, I don't feel like there's any middle ground. I wish there was more options for kids at that age, you know. Because, I mean, being 18, you're like, poof, you got to go figure it out. That's tough for a lot of these kids. But anyways, that's me. But, all right, so I'm assuming you were in the gifted track.
Twice when I was in elementary, and I say this humbly, twice when I was in elementary, they tested me to go in gifted, and they wanted me to go in gifted, which would have been a transfer to yet another school, because not every school had a gifted class. It wasn't offered like that.
So they didn't have it at Northwest, or are you talking about elementary?
When I was younger, when I was at Hempstead, they tested me to go in gifted, and my parents felt I was too young. I think I may have been second grade back then. And then again, when I was going to Mark Twain public schools, they tested me and wanted me to go in gifted. That was at a different school, different direction, longer walk. Back then we walked to school.
Yeah.
There were no buses. We walked to school. But
I remember a crazy story about that too. I'd like to I'll go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did not go to gifted. I had transferred schools. It's difficult for kids. It's difficult for some kids to fit in when they're moving around a lot. And we had already moved frequently with the Army, so I chose not to go to gifted and to stay where I was. There were also peer pressure. There was a girl at Mark Twain who had gone to gifted and then chose to come back, and she said that I wouldn't like it, and you know, peer pressure. And so my parents said, well, it's up to you, do what you want.
Yeah.
So I stayed where I was. So essentially in high school I was track 1.
So what does that mean? Like, are you still going to go to college, or what does that mean, track 1?
Hopefully. It's not like my family had a college fund. It didn't work that way.
No, but like the track itself, was it designed for that, or what was it designed for?
Track 1 was bound for college, yes.
Okay.
Matter of fact, my senior year, you could take college credit classes. So.
Did you end up doing any of that, or no?
I took one. I took Western Civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. History, I like history. I think you can learn a lot from it if it's taught properly.
Yeah.
I think expecting folks to just memorize dates and things. I'm more about concepts, about the big picture. So.
Okay. So when you were a kid and you had to walk to school, didn't you have a little ice accident one time where you were in the ice?
I did. Oh my gosh.
How old were you when that happened?
Oh gosh. In first grade, my mom was small, very small. In first grade, I could wear the same size shoes that she wore. And so she had a pair of boots. I didn't have any boots. And if you knew St. Louis public schools back then, they closed for nothing, you know.
Yeah. And
so my mom put my boots on so I could go to school. She tried to get me to stay home. But for me, school was a safe place. it was the place to go where there was some order, I guess. And so I really wanted to go to school. So she gave me her boots, and it was icy outside. And I was getting ready to cross the street, and if you know St. Louis City streets, there's a sewer on about on every corner, you know, a sewer swat. And I slipped, and I was going down the sewer, got a hold of something, and luckily for me, so there's just me in my head and my arms hanging out of this sewer trying to get back up on the street, and it was just all slick. So some man was going by, and he came by and pulled me out, and I went ahead to school.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's a crazy story. I mean, you're this close to just being in the sewer.
Going in the sewer all the way,
Man,
yes.
that's crazy. All right, so you're in high school, and you're on track A, you know, and you could have been on gifted track. Was there, you know, and you had some different things growing up, poverty, different things. Was there any time maybe you thought about, I mean, you're smart enough to get bumped a grade. Was there any time in high school maybe you thought about quitting?
Yes, actually, I went to drop out 3 times in high school. I was going to drop out 3 times in high school.
And you're gifted on track A person, and you still thought about it?
Track 1.
Track 1, yeah, excuse me.
I went to the office to quit 3 times. Guess you want to know why, maybe?
Well, I don't know, but yeah, I do.
If it will help somebody, you know,
I kind of want to interject just for a second, though.
Okay.
So, people watching this video, like, I'm dealing with these kids on a daily basis who are similar to my mom. They're smart, they can do great things, and then they also want to quit. And this isn't just something that happened before, like, this is now. You know, people need support, they need love out there, and, you know, I'd like to get into it a little more, but, like, there's people just like my mom in that situation that are out there today that are going through those things. You know, we need to really think about what we say and do to people, because, I mean, you never know where they're coming from, you know, their map of the world, you know. So let's get into why were you thinking about quitting? I mean, it's kind of crazy.
My home life was very chaotic and very dysfunctional. And I'd get thrown out of the house a lot of times with nothing, or I would come home and the door would be locked and they would not let me in, you know. And I'm not at all whining about this. I don't want anybody to think that, because I'm not.
No, it's just part of your story.
It's just part of my story, and if it helps anybody out there who has a home life that is not maybe as nurturing as it should be, or as supportive or loving as it should be, or could be, that should is so,
Yeah.
you know, critical parent, and I don't like to do that. But, you know, that's not meeting the needs that you have at your age in life, then you need to know, and I hope that some of this helps you realize that you can overcome that situation in your life. That is not forever. That's
Right.
not a forever. So, there was one time, if anyone is familiar with bi-state buses, you know, they have an end of the line and start of the line. And typically, the ones that ran through North St. Louis would go from downtown St. Louis all the way out to Jennings, which was right outside of North City.
Yeah.
You know, and they'd
That's
sit there
crazy.
a little bit, turn around, and come back and run the same route, you know. So there were times that I would just ride the bus all day back and forth on the route and just sit there and look out the window and think, I don't know what to do, you know, I'm not sure what to do. You know, emotionally, that's not the best thing that could happen to a person, you know. I would consider quitting school then. I went to drop school then. And another time my mom, I can remember another time my mom was somewhat abusive, and she demanded that I go quit school. Here's an example. Typically, we think about getting a part-time job when we're 16. That seems to be the age, 16. Even McDonald's, any place, fast food, it's 16. I always looked younger than what I am. Don't count now, but but aging up, I looked younger than I was. When I was 13, my mom sent me out to a dime store. She told me to go out and get a part-time job. Now, mind you, I was mowing yards, I was babysitting, I was already doing what I could do to earn some money, you know, to help the family, but she sent me out to get a taxable part-time job at the age of 13, and she told me to tell them that I was older, and she told me to tell them that there used to be a hardship certification that public schools would give, and I believe this goes back to the Great Depression, honestly, but she told me that I could get a hardship and I could get hired to work. Well, so I dutifully, because 10 Commandments, utmost respect 10 Commandments, so I went out and tried to find a job, and didn't get a job, so she tossed me out of the house, and so I went to quit then, drop out of school then, and there was one other time that I was going to drop out, and I believe it's because as I'm remembering, it's because I didn't really have a place to stay. When this happens, I do remember, I'm sorry, my parents were married a long time. My parents were both married 4 times each. They had a very tumultuous love-hate relationship, and I remember there were times when I would think, I kind of wish they would just get divorced and this could be done and maybe things would be better, at least for all of us kids. But they did not. That's not to say that there was a lot of faithfulness there. My dad, I always say, Papa was a rolling stone, if anybody's familiar with that song, but, you know, but my dad left and took one of my brothers with him, and my mom, this was after my mom calling, police were always coming to our house, they were always calling the police on each other. You know, it was to that extent, you know, choking each other, just constant. It was just constant. And my mom didn't know what to do. Mind you, I'm still a kid, but she's saying, what should I do? I don't know what to do. What should I do? You know, I don't know where your dad's at. Well, I had a general idea of where my dad, what motel my dad was at. And you know, depending on the youth to be the adult in the family is so difficult for that youth. And you know, folks, we can just say it's unfair to that youth to put those that responsibility on them.
Right.
And I remember I told my mom where my dad was staying, and she called my uncle, her brother, and he took us over there, and you know, I could see my dad was so mad. He was so mad. He did not. I don't know. But at that time, I was going to quit school too. So if you look back on this, I'm saying every time that I was going to quit school, it stemmed, the motivation, the cause stemmed from dysfunctional family dynamics.
Right. Didn't have anything to do with if you like school or not. You like school.
No, for me,
yeah.
I did like school.
Yeah.
I liked school.
Yeah, I mean, you know, everything's a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit deeper into school here before we move on to adulthood.
Okay.
What was something you liked about school? Like maybe what was your favorite subject, or you know, just something in general you liked about it.
I have to, you know, my sophomore English class, we had Mr. Malloy was our teacher, and he was actually an apprentice teacher at the time, but he did a lot of the teaching, and he was really good. He was really good. He was very creative. He was very, he wasn't rigid, so rigid. He would teach us things outside the box as related to English, and he would come up with different ideas, and he was a great teacher. I do want to say, initially I tried to be involved in different activities, different clubs at school. I ended up working on weekends, car hop at Steak and Shake. That was my first taxable job.
How old were you when you ended up getting that one? Were you 16 or 15 or what?
I turned 16 in October and started working there in November, December. So that cut out going to football games. You know, back then football games were on Saturdays. That cut out a lot of football games, you know. And then when I wasn't working, I was expected at home to clean house, keep the house clean. To the extent, clean the bathroom 3 times a week. I'm not saying, you know, I'm a firm believer cleanliness is next to godliness. However, when you're trying to go to school and working jobs and you're expected to clean the entire house, and there's at least 7 people living there, if not more, you know, and once again, I want to emphasize, I don't feel sorry for myself in the least. No. I don't want anyone to take this wrong. It's a little bit, you know, trying to share these things when I'm not always sharing about my life or my history.
Oh, yeah.
You know, even with my children, there's a lot that they're not aware of, and that's
okay.
Yeah, that's okay. You know, you have to get to the point. But if this helps somebody, you know, I understand. And I love Kennett schools too, although I didn't go here, you know,
Right.
go to school here or anything, you know, but I have the utmost respect for the school system here, and I understand poor, and I understand dysfunctional, and if this will help anybody, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it will, because I'm sitting here listening to the stories and like I'm thinking of the kid. I mean, there's kids popping up in my head that have told me like similar things, you know, being their JAG teacher and stuff. So like I know that there's others out there. I mean, you know, going through the same thing you had to go through right now. I mean, at least similar, you know.
You know, and before we do get off childhood, I think maybe that I want to share that even there was physical abuse, there was emotional abuse and mental abuse at my home, many times directed at me. I remember the first time I got put out of the house, I was in 1st grade. My mom put me out of the house. I kept walking and walking and walking. I didn't know what to do. I was in 1st grade.
Right.
Some lady came out of her house and asked me if I was lost, because she kept seeing me just walk around in circles. You know, I have spent nights sleeping in a church doorway, sleeping in the back seat of an unlocked car, you know, just